Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us on the second episode of Ask the Pediatrician with Nevada chapter of the American Academy of Pediatrics. My name is Rebeka Acosta with A&J Patient Advocacy, and tonight I am your host. As a patient advocate and mom of two, I'm very excited to bring this conversation to families across the Silver State. Tonight, I'm joined by members of Nevada AAP, Ms. McAllister, who is the executive director, Dr. Terrence McAllister, who is the current president, and Pam Greenspon, who is the early childhood champion. Before we get started with the good stuff, I have just a few housekeeping notes. For those of you who are joining us live, you can put any questions you have in the chat box, and we'll do our best to get those answered for you at the end. This is being recorded, so you'll be able to watch it on Nevada AAP's YouTube channel in the coming days. And then, of course, any resources that we discuss or share in the chat on the live meeting, we will also put in the notes on the recording so everyone has access to that. All right, so we are ready to get started. Tonight, we are discussing healthy, active living for children and families. Joining me for this important conversation is Dr. Pam Greenspon, who's a board-certified pediatrician and diplomat of the American Board of Obesity Medicine. Thank you so much for being with us tonight and for all your efforts in promoting healthy, active lifestyles for kids. Would you introduce yourself to the audience, please?
Yes, thank you for having me. My name is Pam Greenspon. I am a pediatrician here in Las Vegas at Desert Valley Pediatrics. I've been in Las Vegas over 21 years and have been practicing pediatrics a little bit longer than that. And I really focus on general pediatrics with a big focus on prevention. And, I've always been looking for creative ways to keep kids active, eating well, and just being very creative with their families.
That's great because as a mom of two who are now teenagers, there have been many times in their lives where I needed some advice and creativity to get them to be the healthiest they could be. So as we continue on tonight, we are going to have Ms. McAllister dropping resources in the chat, so be sure to check those. And again, we'll have all those links available in the show notes as well. So the AAP, the American Academy of Pediatrics, maintains that healthy living begins at birth, continues throughout childhood and into adulthood. They have created an approach called the 5210 plan to help families prioritize healthy choices in nutrition, exercise, sleep, and screen time, which is a big one. Dr. Greenspon, can you give us an overview of 5210?
Sure. So this was adapted from a plan that was started in Maine, and it's really been introduced to children, but also to adults. It can really be incorporated into the workplace, so it's been used in a lot of different settings. So 5210 stands for five, trying to encourage everyone to get at least 5 servings of fruits and vegetables every day. 2 relates to the screen time. We encourage people to have less than 2 hours of screen time a day. Of course, I mean, if you have to be on a screen for work or for school, then, beyond that, we don't want kids spending too much time on their screens. One is trying to get at least an hour of physical activity a day, and it can vary a little bit, but essentially, we want at least about an hour of movement each day. And 0 is for the sugar-sweetened beverages. So there are a lot of things that kids and adults are drinking that just, they have too much extra sugar. So we really want to limit those or avoid them completely.
Yeah, I especially am always paying attention to sugar as a diabetic, right? So I appreciate all of those recommendations. Like I said, my kids are now teenagers, and so I agree with many families, this can be overwhelming. It sounds very simple, but trying to raise healthy young people in a world filled with all types of unhealthy things that are marketed right to their iPads. Can we dive into each part of the 5210 approach together and kind of break things down for families?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, let's start with nutrition. So, we really are encouraging kids to get more fruits and vegetables each day. Most children are sometimes barely getting even one fruit or vegetable. So we really want to, try offering them at every meal, offer them as a snack. You can put them in a smoothie, soups, sauces, but definitely, trying to have more whole foods, more plant-based foods, and also really encourage families to cook together. And it doesn't have to be super fancy. I admit I'm not the greatest chef, but I do try to, you know, look at different recipes, and kids can be involved even from very young ages. They can help wash things. You can focus on a color each day and think about, all right, let's try some red foods today. And not because it has any added dyes, but looking for things that are naturally occurring. And just, involve them in different ways, maybe in selecting some of the meal plan. Um, I think making sure they're still getting enough foods with calcium and vitamin D. So lower fat dairy is always really important. And again, trying to limit takeout foods, going to restaurants. We all are very busy. So sometimes you need to, but again, look at the menus there and see, are there some healthier options, and things that can work. So we're limiting our ultra processed foods.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's something we could work on in my own family because my kids are in high school with activities, clubs, and sports, and sometimes soccer matches go till 9 o'clock at night. And can we stop at XYZ on the way home? Oh, and I want to sometimes. Sometimes some French fries sound really good, but that's a really it's something that we've been trying to work on this year with my own family. And on the same note, as a pediatrician, what do you tell your families when they ask you for tips or guidance on snacking? And tweens and teens especially have much more access to food and other food like substances outside of their homes at school, friends, 7-Eleven. What are there any potentially dangerous items that families should know and be talking to their younger people about to stay away from?
Yeah, well, I think one thing are certainly the beverages. They have access to energy drinks, very sugary drinks. The caffeine is not something that we recommend for, young people. And again, trying to do some planning when it works so that maybe you pack some fruit, maybe you have a little baggie of, some nuts or whole grain crackers, cheese sticks, yogurt. If people like to bake, maybe looking at alternatives, more whole grains, maybe dried fruits in there, trying to limit the processed sugars. So,
Okay.
I think obviously every family is different. Everyone has some different health needs. But I think there are a lot of solutions because, yeah, when you get really hungry, you do want to just grab whatever's in the basket. Yeah, things on a
Guilty.
shelf can look really tempting, and
Yeah.
but it may not always be the best choice for fueling our young
Mhm.
people.
Absolutely. Um, Something that you mentioned earlier when we were diving into the nutrition piece of the plan is that sleep disruptions can change the eating habits of young people and adults. And one of the common questions I hear from parents when they come to me as an advocate for guidance is how much sleep should my child be getting? I always refer them back to the AAP recommendations, but can you go over those or the different age groups and the recommended sleep time?
Sure. So, infants, I mean, brand newborns sometimes can sleep over 20 hours a day. So that's very
Oh,
typical.
jealous.
Yeah. But between 4 and 12 months, it can vary still quite a bit. Could be 12 to 18 hours. Typically, they're taking multiple naps. They may be sleeping a pretty long stretch at night, but there's still some babies who may be waking up. Toddlers, 1 to 2 years old, typically will need some naps and may need about 11 to 14 hours a
Okay.
day. Preschoolers, 3 to 5, still could be around 10 to 13 hours. And sometimes they're still napping, but usually by 4 or 5, they've stopped napping. Usually kindergarten, no more naps.
Mhm.
Um, so the school age kids, 6 to 12, could be 9 to 12 hours, but I still see kids who really aren't getting enough. And then teenagers, it seems like they could sleep all day, but trying to keep them on a routine is really important. And for them could be 8 to 10 hours. And definitely I see a lot of kids going to bed quite late, having to
Yeah.
wake up early because of the early school times, which, don't
Mhm.
always correlate, with their circadian rhythm.
Yes, I agree with that. And that is a struggle in our house, making sure we're to bed early enough to get that many sleep hours before their alarms go off at 5:30. Um, a few things that I have found as a mom that go hand in hand with good sleep are physical activity and screen time. Um, I think when my children were younger, we had a lot less things to consider around screen time. It's really exploded over the last 10 years with all the devices and just all of the things. Does the 5210 plan address that at all?
Yeah, definitely. You do want to limit screen times, especially before bed, try to have a
Mhm.
break. I recommend about an hour or so because it potentially could affect sleep cycles. And if screens are in the bedroom, some kids, just
Mm,
keep watching and watching and, they just don't fall asleep very easily, or they just want to keep watching or playing a game. So
right.
ideally, we want to limit screens and not keep them in the bedroom. And again, really trying to be aware of how much screen time kids are on. I mean, again, it used to be maybe there was one TV in a family room
Hmm.
where everyone would gather and you kind of had an idea what people were watching, what they were doing on their screens. But so many people have cell phones or an iPad, video
Right.
games. Um, their laptops, they have access to so many different things. So, and most kids do end up being on screens much longer than 2 hours a day. But I think if parents are really aware what their kids are viewing, how they're using their screens, because I mean, as pediatricians, we're not opposed to screens in
Right.
as a whole and the technology, but we just want to use it in healthy ways so that it's not impacting children's sleep or development.
That makes perfect sense. I know for my family, when the children were old enough and they got their phones, another parent that has kids just a couple years older gave me the great advice of never let them charge their phone at night in their room. So we have our common charging station in the kitchen, and that's actually helped a lot with solving any arguments and fights in the evening about that. So we have just a few minutes left, and I was checking the chat as well as a few questions came in when people were registering. So I'd like to go over those. Let me see here. The very first question that we got from somebody who registered was, "What are your recommendations for babies and toddlers with screen time?"
Yeah, so that's a great question because, I have seen baby videos and, toddler
Mm-hmm.
videos and, some of them seem very popular. But officially the AAP does not recommend screen time under the age of 2, although there
Okay.
is an exception for children 18 to 24 months. And if you are doing that, it's recommended that it be done with the family so you can talk about things, watch programming together, really try to make it as interactive as possible. And then,
Okay.
I mean, there may be some screen time if family members live out of state and you really want to FaceTime them, that may be okay, but when we're looking at kids' development, we really want a lot of interactive
Mm-hmm.
playtime and time with their families rather than
Yeah.
watching screens.
Yeah, I think that's a great distinction that you make for the young ones. Is like it's got to be interactive, and yeah, I think that's great. And that's something easy for families to understand and explain to other caregivers or loved ones in their family, so that everyone's on the same page. Because it doesn't really help if babysitter is letting the little toddler on the iPad all day. um, Another question that we got, it was, are flavored drops in water, like the little drops that you can buy in the little containers, is that adding that to water bad for kids?
I mean, I think it depends what's in those. I mean, is it all sugar? Is it an artificial
Mm,
sweetener? Because again, we don't want to be adding extra sugar to their water.
right.
You could think about some other things like maybe adding lemon, mint,
Hmm.
some fresh fruit, cucumber slices. I've seen people make ice cubes out of fresh
Oh,
fruits or
that's a
fruit
great
or
idea.
maybe some juice. So there are ways to, make the water taste a little different. I'll sometimes do a few splashes of a juice if, the kids are
Hmm.
just really refusing to drink plain
Right.
water. But I think, yeah, it's fine to flavor it, but I would be aware of what's
Of
in there. And
how
sometimes
you're
there's just a
flavoring it.
bunch of chemicals as well. So.
Right. Absolutely. Great advice. And then I think I talked about this a little bit already. Someone else is on my wavelength and asked, should teenagers be able to keep their phones in their bedrooms?
Yeah, I mean, typically no. They always have a good reason why they should. Oh, my
Of
alarm
course.
clock, and I mean, there used to be alarm clocks and there still are.
Hmm.
So, we can always have a separate alarm if they need
Hmm.
it. Some of them really insist they need to listen to music. And, again, there are other devices. Uh,
Talk radios.
yeah, exactly. Record players are making a comeback. So,
I
there
saw that. Yeah.
yeah, so there are definitely other ways to incorporate some techniques for relaxation without having a telephone in the room. So ideally, you want the bedroom to be a place just for sleep, and not a place where they're, playing games and watching movies and doing all
Hmm.
kinds of other things.
Wholeheartedly agree. And I think my kids are not going to be very happy with me now that I have a doctor signing off on that. So we are just about at our time. I'd like to invite Dr. McAllister to hop back on and share any thoughts he has about how he works with families in the 5210 plan in his clinic.
Yeah, thanks. That was a great talk and a lot of important topics. I think the most important thing, what I like about 5210 is that it's so kind of open-ended. There's not a lot of very strict rules to follow, and it's easy to adapt it to your family, to what your needs are. It just provides this basic overview, this large guideline, and then you can adapt it to what your family really needs. And that's why it's so helpful because it is so adaptable.
That's perfectly stated. Dr. Greenspun, any final advice for families that are listening?
Yeah, again, I think it's very adaptable. But these are things that really the whole family can incorporate, because we want everyone doing these things together. We want them to get outside, to eat in a healthy way, to get creative with what they're eating, maybe go to a farmer's market, shop together, um, and just try to look at different ways that they can all stay very active and healthy their whole lives.
Great. I love it. And I'll just put a plug in there for all the moms and dads and guardians that are watching or watching the recording. Have your kiddos, especially little ones, help with the grocery list. My kids have done it for a long time, and now we actually have a shared notes app on our phones. Of course, I don't know. We might have to scratch that part now, but where they add items that as they get low or they decide that they want this XYZ for dinner, they've started to do that. So it's been super helpful, taking some stress off of the parents and getting them involved. It's really worked well. So with that, we are done with this episode. Thank you so much to Dr. Greenspon, Dr. McAllister, and everyone from Nevada AAP for coming on and sharing their expertise with us tonight. Great news. We have already scheduled our next episode, which will take place on October 28th, and it will feature Dr. McAllister, and we are going to be discussing how to embrace autism in everyday life. I'm really excited for this one. So have a great evening, and we will see you next time.